Hey, hey, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to be chatting about functional testing and why functional testing or looking at testing with a functional medicine lens is actually important. This is the 98th episode of the podcast. I am going to be releasing a special bonus episode on Thursday, which will be episode 99. And then next Tuesday, we have the 100th episode of the podcast. And I really want to celebrate that. It's a big milestone. Not a lot of podcasters hit that point in their podcasting journey. And, we've seen a lot of growth this year with the podcast. It's something that I really enjoy doing. I put a lot into these episodes, and I love that I'm able to sit down, hit record on an episode, and just kind of chat with you guys about the things that I think are important for your hormone health, give you some education and some resources so that you can start taking action on them on your own, whether you're working with me as a client or not. So be sure, if you are just tuning in, be sure that you hit subscribe on the podcast today and come back next Tuesday to hear the 100th episode. We're going to be doing a giveaway. I would love if you guys could help me spread the word about the 100th episode of the podcast. I would like to get, it in front of more eyes and into more ears. So I'll talk about that a little bit at the end again, as well as just a reminder so that you guys don't forget. But I want to get on into today's topic. So, like I said, I wanted to talk about functional testing because, you know, it's, I can say until I'm blue in the face, like, you should look at functional testing. Functional testing, I think, would really help you get these answers. I think it would help fill these gaps. I think it would help you find the answers that you're not getting through your conventional provider. But I really want you to understand the why behind that and really even understand, like, what is functional testing? What's the difference? What do you even mean when you say that? So the first thing that I want to tackle is blood work. Now, blood work is blood work. You're still going to go to the same lab. You're still going to get your arm poked or whatever. They're going to collect the blood. That is going to be the same process. It's still going to be processed by the same lab. But when we look at the results with a functional medicine lens, we are looking at reference ranges that are different from your normal doctor or normal facility is using to say, yep, everything here looks normal, or nope, this is high, this is low. The range that we're looking at is different. And that is because the normal ranges that most places use were created based on an average of that, like, somewhat local population. And when you factor in their test results to come up with that average, they're counting in people with diseases, people that are already sick, that are not at optimal health. So that kind of brings down or widens the range of what is normal. So I don't know about you, but I don't want to just be compared to what is normal when we are also including some chronically ill test results in that group of what's making up those normal numbers. I want to know what my lab results should be if I am in great health. If I and you have to define kind of for yourself what great health means to you, because it's going to mean something different to each individual. But for me, it's most important to know that, like, I am feeling really good. I have the energy. I, am not having chronic illnesses, therefore I'm not having to worry about taking prescription medications to address things like blood pressure, or I'm not having to worry about, suboptimal kidney function. I'm not having to worry about my liver. Like, I am in a healthy state and I'm setting myself up for good longevity the rest of my life. That is the type of range that I want to sit down with my labs and look at and say, okay, what am I outside of that optimal range on, or what am I nearing being outside of that optimal range? And then take that information, not to always tell me XYZ is wrong, with you, or you have XYZ condition, but I want to look at it as information and data that helps me guide where I need to change my focus up a little bit. Maybe it's a diet change I need to make. Maybe it's a lifestyle change I need to make. Like, what steps could I be taking to help myself get even healthier and continue working towards that state of optimal health? And it's not that we expect, perfect labs. And we'll get into this with the HTMA in a second a little bit, but I've looked at a lot of blood labs. I've looked at a lot of HTMAs, and perfect doesn't really exist because we're not science experiments that are living in this very controlled, contained environment. We have a lot of variability in our day-to-day life. We have a lot of variability in our choices, and that's perfectly fine. So, we don't want to just expect that we have to micromanage every single lab to the point that it comes back and everything is in the perfect range, because that's not very realistic. And you guys know that I'm all about being realistic. Now, I wanted to give a little bit of a tangible example for blood work specifically. And, that's not the point of this podcast. So I didn't want to review every marker. I really just wanted to call out one that I thought mostly applies to everyone and would really help you guys conceptualize what I mean when I talk about the difference in normal ranges and functional ranges and functional testing of blood work. So we have TSH. That is our thyroid stimulating hormone. It is a very standard piece of blood work that gets ordered on someone's yearly visit to their provider. And also, one of the first things that are going to be ordered when someone comes in and they have I would say like most any symptom, but a lot of the symptoms that the women in my circle, in my world, are dealing with: fatigue, trouble with weight, menstrual cycle irregularities, trouble getting pregnant, all of those things. Like, thyroid's one of the first things that we want to evaluate. So if we just took the optimal ranges and normal ranges with TSH and we compared those. Now, I looked at my own recent labs back in August to see what they had listed as their normal range for TSH. It was 0.46 to 4.68. Now, through my training, I know that an optimal TSH is 0.5 to 2. Now, why this is important is because let's say we had someone that went to their provider, they had a laundry list of low thyroid symptoms, and they went to the lab, they got their blood work back, and their TSH was a 3 or a 3.5. Their provider is going to call them up on the phone and say, "Hey, we got your labs back and everything looks good." And they're going to hang up the phone and they're going to send them on their way, and they're not going to do anything else. It's going to end there. Now, if I'm working with someone and I'm looking at their labs that they turn into me, their provider has ordered them, or maybe I've ordered it for them, but they've went and they've got these labs done, and they come back to me and they're like, "My result, it's a 3.5 or it's a 3." I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say that does not fall within the optimal range for TSH, because the optimal range is 0.5 to 2. That tells me that we already have a little bit of hypothyroidism going on at 3 and 3.5. A provider isn't going to start treating it, not going to start any medication until it gets above 4.68. And then at that point, if it was just, barely above that, there's still probably a conversation happening between patient and provider, and they're deciding, is medicine right, is it not? And I'm not saying the conversation that I am having with clients is not about medication. I do not prescribe medication. The goal of looking at optimal ranges is not to send you back to your provider and say, like, "Well, I work with this functional medicine hormone coach, and she says that this is not optimal and you need to put me on thyroid medication." That's not the goal. The goal is to look at the lab and look at the ranges and find the things that fall outside of the optimal range, and then address the lifestyle and the diet and maybe supplements that we can to help bring that lab back into range so that down the road you can avoid the need for medication. We can help correct the things that are going wrong in the body early on before there's such a severe problem that you've got to have the medication. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, please let me know. Send me your questions and I will explain it again. But like I said, I just wanted to give that kind of tangible example of something that honestly I see pretty frequently. And the optimal ranges of lab work also give us that opportunity to act in advance and be proactive with our healthcare rather than reactive down the road when things have gotten so bad or so out of range that we really do need the medication to treat it and address it. Okay, moving on. HTMA, hair tissue mineral analysis, is a functional test that you guys hear me talk about a lot. And sometimes I'll get asked the question like, well, can my doctor order this for me so that I can, pay for it through insurance? And the answer 9.5 times out of 10 is going to be no, because providers don't even know what this test is. They've never been trained on it. They don't understand it. Honestly, if you told them that you were going to have this done, some of them would look at you like you were absolutely cuckoo. And it's not because you're crazy. It's not because this test is not valid. It's not because this test doesn't give good data. It's because they don't know what it is and they haven't been trained on it. So it's foreign to them. And sometimes providers are very interested in things they don't know about. Others are just like, oh, if I needed to know that, they would have taught it to me in medical school. That must be hogwash. But the reason, to keep myself from getting on a tangent about that, the reason that HTMA is powerful and the reason that I love it as a tool, as a functional test, it's my favorite functional test. HTMA testing allows us to look at things differently than we're looking at it on blood work. With a hair tissue mineral analysis test, we are getting to look at the inside of the cell. Whereas with blood work, we're looking outside the cell. For many of our minerals, they are in their greatest quantities inside our cell. Their job is like performed inside the cell. Our hormones, a lot of them, like coming back to the thyroid example, thyroid hormone's job is not completed floating around in our blood. It's completed inside the cell. So we've really got to see about and evaluate our cellular health to get a good insight into how a lot of different body functions is working. This impacts our metabolism. It impacts thyroid, our blood sugar, even down to there's a lot of connection, that we get to evaluate with HTMA between our estrogen and progesterone levels and estrogen clearance. We really can uncover a lot with an HTMA test, which is another reason why it's one of my favorites. It's one test. It's relatively inexpensive, and we get like 40-ish different data points to look at. Plus, the other reason that I really like HTMA and the reason why I think it's such a excellent functional test is because with blood work, you go to the lab, they poke your arm, they draw your blood, and with the exception of like a hemoglobin A1C and a other very small handful of lab tests, you're only looking at the data at that single point in time. What was that level exactly when they drew my blood? And especially in my world of hormones, there have been so many studies that have shown that even labs repeated again 30 minutes later, an hour later, 2 hours later, huge variances in those results. Now, with the HTMA test, we get to look at data reflectively over the last 3 to 4 months, depending on the rate of your hair growth. 3 months is the most common window there. So that gives us more confidence in the data to say, yes, your potassium is low, versus if we were looking at it on blood work, we could question a little bit of like, well, has it been low for a long time? Is it just low today? Is this kind of just a isolated incident that has just started to happen in the last month or so? Is there something acute, like an illness, like maybe the person has had vomiting and diarrhea, and that is what has um, gotten their potassium level down so low, if we see it on blood work. When we see it on the HTMA test, we know that it's a 3 to 4 month average. So it better informs our decisions and our next steps. Now, I want to talk about Dutch testing for a second, because as I just mentioned, there have been a lot of studies done to show that with traditional blood lab work on hormone testing for estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, there can be big swings and big variances in traditional blood work, even when, like I said, they're drawn 30 minutes apart, an hour apart, 2 hours, whatever. This is one of the best reasons that I like to use Dutch testing, because you collect multiple urine samples throughout a 24-hour period. It's 4 samples to be exact, for most of their test options. And then it gives us, a cumulative view of that total amount. And then for things like your cortisol, you can see the pattern of that cortisol throughout the day, because it plots out those 4 different data points from the 4 unique samples that you provided. It also lets us see how the body is processing the estrogen specifically is what I'm most often looking at, but we also see it with things like your DHEA. But you can see how the body is processing those. So we don't only have a number to look at, we get insight into how that is being used and metabolized by the body, which can then link back to specific symptoms. And it tells us, I don't want to get too in the weeds, but like the way your body is metabolizing your estrogens, for example, can tell us specifically like how we need to better support the body so that it can more effectively clear and process that estrogen if we were in a state of estrogen dominance, for example. So, it gives us a lot of data to go off of instead of just the single value one point in time. That's really like the 3 functional tests and functional lenses that I wanted to hit on. And there is value in all of these things. Everyone is very unique. Everyone is very individualized in what workup you need based on your symptoms and your goals. So I'm not saying that everyone that's listening to this that has a hormone symptom needs blood work and an HTMA and a Dutch. That's why when I work with my clients and I meet with people that are interested in working with me, we have a conversation about, these are the symptoms I'm experiencing. This is my goals. This is why I want to address this. This is how it's impacting my life. This is what I've done in the past to try to correct this, and this is how it went. We talk about all of those things so that I can then look at all of it objectively and say, okay, this is where we need to start. We need to get you some blood work. We need to get you an HTMA. Or no, actually, I think we just need to start with a Dutch test, or whatever the situation might be. Now, you guys have heard me talk a lot lately about the Mirror at-home hormone tracking device. And this is not specifically a functional test. I use it in my functional practice. I look at the results with a functional lens. And that's why I did want to touch on it and include it here also, because like these are the 4 things that I do and incorporate with my clients. So I think that is valuable and very informative. With the Mirror at-home device, you are collecting morning urine samples. You are provided with test wands. You're dipping that urine in the urine, for 20 seconds, you put it into the analyzer. It takes about 16 minutes and you're getting results. And the things you're checking there are estrogen, progesterone, LH, and FSH. And it's absolutely fascinating that we can collect that on ourselves at home and within 16 minutes get results. Like, I obviously love data, but I also just love women's access to that type of thing in today's world and in today's technology. I think this is literally going to change the game, so to speak, as we move forward in the future. With that data, though, I apply a functional lens to it because we need to go back, we need to look at the cycle as a whole. How were the patterns throughout that month? Were there, was estrogen higher in a certain phase than it should have been? Did we get the LH peak that we were looking for? After that LH peak occurred, did progesterone rise as it should have? How does those levels and those things compare to someone's BBT? How does it compare to their symptoms? Excuse me. What connections can we maybe draw between symptoms and hormone levels that we're seeing? And then how can we take that information and again apply some diet, lifestyle, maybe supplement type of interventions to address some of these symptoms that this person is experiencing? Or how can we use this data to help this person get pregnant and have a healthy pregnancy, which is their goal, and that's what they're working towards. It's all in how we use the data to inform our next steps that, really matter. And we're really, one of the main principles, I guess, of functional medicine is taking the time to really listen to the patient's story, their concerns, and their goals. Not just cutting someone off at 5 minutes and say, that's all I have time for today. I'm going to order you these tests and my nurse will call you with the results. Like really taking the time to understand all the things that the person has going on. Give them the space and the time to share their symptoms, to share the intimate details with you that they might need to get a little comfortable with you first before they share those things and before they ask those questions that they really wonder and they really want to know, but they also don't want to seem like a dummy, so they're kind of scared to ask. And when you only have 15 minutes total with a provider that you see once a year, you don't really feel comfortable asking. Functional medicine is a lot about paying attention to the symptoms, the day-to-day, the normal habits, and then addressing the symptoms accordingly, not just trying to make the symptom go away. We're trying to interpret, what is this symptom, this little message from my body? What is it trying to tell me? What is it trying to alert me is off so that I can step in and fix it, correct it, address it so that it doesn't cause me more problems down the road. So that is my little tangent episode on functional medicine and functional testing and why the functional testing piece is so important for so many people and why it is so helpful for so many people. It really does come along and it's kind of that missing piece of what people have been looking for as they've been on sometimes this very long journey of trying to address their health and their hormones and get to a state where they're not suffering with symptoms every day and they do feel like they're their healthiest and most like energetic self. So as a reminder, as I wrap this up, we are coming up on the 100th episode of the podcast. It's going to drop on next Tuesday. I'm very excited about it. I'll just go ahead and give you guys a little preview. It is going to be an episode, deep dive that is a little overdue on HTMA testing specifically. I am going to be doing a special giveaway as just a fun way to help promote the episode and celebrate the fact that the podcast has hit the 100th episode. So if you are listening, maybe for the very first time and you've not hit the subscribe button yet, or if you're listening for, your fifth, sixth, seventh time, but you still haven't hit the subscribe button, please do that so that you don't miss future episodes. I hope that you guys have an fabulous rest of your week. I will chat with you later on Thursday of this week where I actually am going to be sharing a Mirror at-home hormone tracking case study that was very successful. And then, like I said, I'll be back next Tuesday for that 100th episode. So I hope you all have a great week and I'll talk to you then.